My guest, of course, is Larry Nichols. Larry, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Thank you, buddy. Well, I'm hanging in here.
Good,
How about
good.
you?
I'm well. Good to hear you. I think everybody's always pleased when we hear you on the line, sounding strong. Larry, you're a guy who's been in politics since the days where the very whiff that someone might be a socialist could ruin their career. And yet now it seems that democratic socialism is the most popular thing somebody could be.
Well, you know, Jason, I've told you before, I got really concerned. No, concern is not the word, scared, in the 2016 election. When you back up and look at it, more people voted for Bernie Sanders and Hillary, a socialist and a communist. More people voted in the Democratic side for those two than voted for all the Republicans put together.
Wow.
So that meant on that day, if you just extrapolate it, that day, 51% of this country would have voted to turn socialism, to turn to socialism. And there's a misnomer out there, this democratic socialism.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. There's no such thing. It's one of those things, kind of like being sort of pregnant. You either are pregnant or you're not.
Right. Well, Wikipedia says that democratic socialism is a political philosophy that advocates political democracy alongside social ownership of the means of production, with an emphasis on self-management and democratic management of economic institutions. I mean, really, the problem, Larry, is that capitalism is in large part based on human nature, and humans are mostly driven by greed and the fact that most people are lazy. So capitalism was intended to allow the leaders to succeed and for people with, you know, radical ideas, whether it's Thomas Edison or Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or name the inventor, to excel and to be motivated to do a better job and try harder and work harder. Socialism, this, you know, democracy, obviously we all want a democratic republic, but changing it to democratic socialism, tell us more about what implications you see down the road here, Larry.
Well, when you start talking about socialism, democratic socialism, number one, Wikipedia is just making up stuff.
Right.
What'll happen under socialism, the first thing that's going to happen, they will take over the media, which you and I might assume that they've already got it from the way it's been right now. Next thing they do, they start nationalizing everything they can get their hands on. So you can figure that the banks will soon be nationalized. That's why I tell people, if you got money, if you can't see it and hold it in your hands, you don't have it. One of the first rules of socialism is to drain the coffer and put the money into this great big pile under the pretense that they're going to divide it up equally with everybody. But the biggest failing of socialism is pretty much what you just described about capitalism. It's the opposite of that. Why would anybody work harder if it doesn't matter? You're going to make the same that the guy next to you makes that sits on his butt and doesn't do anything.
Right.
You're going to make the same money. And then what happens when the central committee takes over the funds? They don't pass it around like you thought they would. Such is the case with Venezuela. Venezuela, they're eating dogs and cats and rats.
Yeah.
A loaf of bread, you know, they can't afford to buy a loaf of bread. That's what happens when you go to socialism. Now, capitalism's not perfect, but it does do just what you said. It provides for people that are willing to excel. And if you're willing to work hard enough, you can excel.
It's one of the key, you know, it's one of the cornerstones of America, capitalism and free markets and all that kind of stuff. I mean, socializing things. I want to point one thing out, Larry. I don't know if you got a chance to hear Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She gave her first speech on the floor of Congress. Let me just play a moment of this for you.
Mr. Obed was born in Yemen and came to the United States when he was 8 years old. His childhood dream was to become a pilot, and he knew and felt that in the United States, all things are possible, and his dream could come true. Mr. Obed's dream did come true. He's been a federal employee for 14 years, has 2 children, and a mortgage for his home in the Morris Park neighborhood of the Bronx. He studied hard, got his pilot's license, and is now an air traffic controller supervisor at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City.
Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the purpose of this speech that she's giving was to underscore the plight of people, her constituents, of course, who've been affected by this government shutdown. But what it caused me to think, Larry, is that, you know, maybe a lot of people listening aren't old enough to remember when Ronald Reagan ended an air traffic controller's strike by firing them all. And I guess
that's right.
He nationalized it at that point, but I don't really think air traffic controllers are a job for government employees. The guys flying the planes aren't government employees. They're employed by these private airlines. Why don't the airlines take on the expense of or the airports take on the expense? Like, if I never fly on a plane, I don't want my tax dollars going towards commercial air traffic control.
Well, if the private sector paid for it, the air control system for all of our airports would be upgraded phenomenally by now.
Might be.
You know,
right.
the federal government, it never touches anything that it doesn't spoil. It doesn't. And, you know, she can talk about that all day long, but she doesn't understand. That's what's just driving me crazy. She doesn't understand anything that has to do with government. I never will forget, I guess the greatest thing I remember about her was in some interview with somebody, and she was talking about health care for everybody. Everybody should get health care. I mean, even if you're illegal, you should get health care. And the interviewer just asked, well, where are you going to get the money to do it? She said, it's free. Then she started talking about education. It should be free. College should be free, etc. And again, the interviewer asked, where are you going to get the money? She said, it's free.
It's crazy.
There is no money. It's free. See, now, when you put somebody in our Congress with that mentality that thinks that it's free, there is no money. You don't have to worry about money because it's just free. Yeah. Now you're seeing the beginning of socialism. Because if it's free, then that means the doctors, where are they going to get their money?
Right.
How are they going to live? Nurses, how are they going to live?
Janitors at the
It
hospital.
all breaks down. Right. It all breaks down.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry. Some people in America are born, they don't have drive, they're not going to work harder than anybody else, and they feel that they're in a rut, and they feel like, well, golly, I'm as smart as Donald Trump. Well, you know, obviously you may be that smart, but the brakes didn't go your way. That's the way capitalism goes. I know a lot of people that are very brilliant, that have brilliant ideas, took all their money put into them, and guess what? It flopped.
Yeah.
But most of those guys just lick their wounds and come back strong and try again. That's a winner in a capitalist system.
Yeah.
But in a socialist environment, you don't have that. And that's why I have adopted a slogan, a campaign slogan, never socialism. Folks, that says it all. Never socialism. We can't let it happen, Jason. We can't. You understand, you and I are responsible for the generations after us. Even if the millennial generation thinks that's what they want, we're responsible for them. We're the elders now. We're the people that are supposed to be guiding them. And I'm worried. I'm worried because of that 2016 vote. And then I'm also worried when I hear the Democrats are introducing reparation and going to pass it in the House. They're going to introduce free college. They're going to pass it in the House, pay off all college loans, pass it in the House. They're going to do that. Not because it's going to happen, Jason. It won't happen. It can't happen. But because it'll get votes. They will shower the Democratic Party with votes.
Wow. You know, Larry, some of our viewers are telling us right now, I think this is in regard to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We would have to verify this, but PRD004 is saying she has a 430 credit score, 2 evictions, and 2 closed check accounts. Well, that's not great, but I mean, what it speaks to, Larry, is she's obviously a young, inexperienced person. And, you know, age 29, obviously she's an adult, she's a woman, but, you know, I've met people in their 40s who just don't have it together and don't know what they're doing or talking about and aren't that sharp. So, I mean, she could be 22 and a genius, but there's so much about her that doesn't seem to ring true to me. I mean, she's told us that she's from a basically financially destitute family, that she had to work cleaning homes, didn't have enough money for an apartment in Washington, D.C., but yet people note that she's wearing $3,000 suits, and I saw her on Stephen Colbert wearing an Apple Watch. And granted, it's only a couple of $100, but I question the whole way she was elected. I mean, I've spoken to you and other people with campaign experience about this idea Laura Loomer had about running for Congress, and whatever people might think about Laura, certainly her level of intelligence, I believe, exceeds what you'd expect from a 25-year-old. Her level of tenacity and enthusiasm are remarkable for a person of any age. So what I'm getting at is I don't really see Ocasio-Cortez as an exceptional person in any regard. She seems like sort of an attractive, young Latina woman who maybe, fits the mold for what they want to advertise as the next political product. And this video of her dancing around provocatively, it's selling her like a product. They're playing a song that everybody knows from the show Friends. We have this attractive girl dancing around, shaking her boobs, shaking her hair. It's a weird thing.
Well, not really if you understand campaigns. What's happening with her, she has become the showpiece to get millennials, the younger people. She relates to younger people.
Right.
Young people don't relate to Mitch McConnell.
Right.
You got it? They just, even if they sit down and talk to him, they just don't relate to Mitch McConnell. And so now they've convinced our millennial group that the Congress, our government, is made up of nothing but old, fat white men.
It's not far from the truth.
God, that they believe that. Well, it's not far from the truth, except we've got this time more women than ever. There are more blacks than ever. There's more Latinos than ever. I mean, we'll change, but that's not what they're using her for. They're using her to sell the brand socialism. Socialism. When you see her, you see the young people see her, and that's what socialism means. When you're talking to somebody that's old enough to vote, just turned old enough to vote, what's that, 18 now?
Yeah.
They just turned 18, and she says it's free. They don't have the knowledge, Jason, to know that that's not right. They don't. So she is their instrument they're using to introduce us to socialism. She and a few others that are coming into the Democratic Party. Now, Jason, I've got to announce that not this coming Thursday, but the Thursday of next week, we're going to introduce my plan. And that plan is when we're going to call our congressmen and senators, and we're going to read a script.
Right.
And that script, folks, is going to tell, let me read part of it.
Sure.
Hello, I'm calling this is to a congressman. Hello, I'm calling to get a message to the congressman. Please tell him that we are tired of your party constantly trying to impeach President Trump instead of doing your job of representing us. Also, your party's move pushing us into socialism must be stopped. So know this. If you vote to impeach President Trump or vote to support the socialist agenda, I will do everything in my power, along with my family and my friends, to make sure you're defeated in the next election and that you'll never hold public office again. And it goes on to, you'll go on to say in the script, Larry Nichols asked me to call you. And if you don't believe, Larry Nichols asked me to call you or tweet you to prove we will expose you for what you're doing to our nation. And if you don't believe Larry Nichols can do what he says, dial 1-800-BILL-CLINTON and see if he can't do what he says he'll do. Never socialism. Then
what happens when people call 1-800-BILL-CLINTON, Larry?
No, not them. The congressman's to call.
Ah.
It's kind of a play on words. Dial 1-800-BILL-CLINTON, Mr. Congressman, and ask him if I won't do what I say.
Got it. Maybe we should set up 1-800-BILL-CLINTON and have a message from Larry. So, Larry, can people get that script as yet from NicholsLive.com?
They can get it. First off, there's 2 programs that explain on Larry Nichols' official channel on YouTube. Okay. You need to see the January 20th program and then the January 21st program. There I explain this plan as best I can. But folks, I need all of you to call. And you're going to call every one of your congressmen 6 times. 6 times. 6 times in his local office, 6 times in his, 2 times. Once in his local office, once in his national office, but you're going to do that 3 times. And you're going to do this with every congressman you have in your state, and both of your senators. And you're going to do it in a period of 10 days. And what's going to happen, Jason, we're going to shut that phone down. We're going to shut the phone down. What always happens with this trick, and it's a trick, when they hear you say, hello, I'm calling to get a message, after a while, they'll start hanging up because they've heard it so many times, but they still count the call. And folks, I'm counting on 2 rules in politics. 2. This plays to 2 rules, and they work every time, or it works every time. First rule of politics is your congressman, your senator doesn't care anything about you. They don't care about the country. They don't care about anything but keeping their job.
Right.
Number 1. Number 2, they know this rule. You can never make someone like you enough to work as hard to get you elected as somebody that hates you will work to defeat you. They get scared when they hear that you and your family and your friends are going to do everything in their power to spread the word to keep you from getting elected again. Now, the numbers will multiply in their mind, Jason. So if they get 100, they'll think it's 10,000. I've been in those offices. I know what happens when they get a phone call, not an email, not a letter. When they get a phone call, they think for every 10 people, there's 1,000 that feel the same way but aren't calling.
Right.
So, folks, we're going to do it.
Yeah. And
we're going to jam it up. We're going to stop them from defeating President Trump in 2020. Right now, there's a good chance. Right now, Jason, there's a good chance that he's beat in 2020.
You think so?
I was asked the other day, when do you think Robert Mueller's going to put out his report? He's going to put it out when it most hurts President Trump in his reelection. They'll time it just right.
Right. Do you think
there are any signs? All you're going to hear from now until his election is impeach. And they're not going to even impeach him by 2020.
Yeah,
they're going to prove that he's going to be impeached.
Well, right. I mean, what they're basically doing right now, Larry, if I'm reading it correctly, is that they're just trying to put so much stink on Trump that they can foul his bid to be reelected in 2020. It seems less like an actual effort to impeach him for actual crimes. Right. Very reminiscent of the lawsuits being brought against me. They don't necessarily think or want to have a positive outcome in the suit. They just want all the negative publicity and other people that they're implicating in the lawsuit to not speak to me and things like that. And they're able to, clamp down a certain amount of activity just by having this type of negative publicity, right?
They're branding you. He's going to be branded.
Yeah.
And it's going to come out there, and they're going to say, "Why are you going to bother to let Now look, Jason. Let's be honest and let's be quite frank.
Yeah.
Any election is 40-40-20. It's 40-40-20 from the day it starts till it's 40-40-20 till the day it ends.
What do you mean?
40, 40, 20. Well, 40% love you, 40% hate you, and 20% don't care. Now, we call the 20% swing voters. But they're not swing voters. Swing voters gives you the impression that they're knowledgeable. They just haven't made up their mind yet.
Right.
No, truth
They're just
is,
undecided.
they just don't care. They don't care enough about politics to follow it. They just don't care.
Right.
And then as it gets close to the election, you know what they do? They buy into the garbage.
Right.
They buy into the branding. We are so in America accustomed to buying branding.
Exactly.
Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper. You know, I'm a pepper too. How many of you see McDonald's hamburgers when you get them that look like the ones you see in the ads?
Right. Well,
they don't look the same.
And the branding, as you're saying, it goes for Ocasio-Cortez. It's like, hey, you don't like old, fat white men in Congress. How about a slender, attractive 20-something Latina who's jiggling around like she's, you know, on stage in America's Got Talent? It puts an impression in your mind. Because I remember when that video came out, I remember thinking, well, what's the big deal? It's not like she's embarrassing herself or drunk doing something inappropriate. She's just like, you know, college girl having a nice time with her friends. But I've thought about it some more now, and I don't think it was necessarily put out by Republicans who want to make her look bad. I think it was put out, by people who want everybody to have a positive impression about this young, vibrant, energetic woman.
Yeah, look at it this way. If you got it, flaunt it in politics.
Right.
And that's what they're doing with her. She's got it. She's got the look. She's got the youth. And then she's dumb enough to promote socialism. Bernie Sanders promoted socialism, and look how far he got with it. Now imagine some hot young Latino girl promoting it. You know, if you're cool, what are you going to do if you're a young person? If you're cool, you're going to go that way because that's where all the cool people are, you see? Right. Branding.
Well, and also I think they know that a lot of people, whatever their age might be, and perhaps this is particularly true of young people, aren't necessarily into doing a lot of legwork to look into things. They just see someone who speaks like them and looks like them. And, you know, I mean, Ocasio-Cortez could have been in a Star Wars movie or something, and she'd be on TV, and people would say, oh, I like this person. And you really don't know anything about an actor that you see. It's interesting, Larry, having worked in Hollywood, there's, you know, more cases than not when I had opportunities to meet actors or cinematographers or people in the industry who I looked up to. They're people, and you're going to like and dislike as many of them as you would any random person you meet. Wilbur Ross, for instance, was kind of a dick when I met him, and I didn't look up to him or anything like that, but you know, you meet some people you like, you meet some people you don't. They're just trying to get everybody to like Ocasio-Cortez, and if you're somebody coming out of college with a lot of debt or not knowing what job you're going to have, you know, the notion that instead of a billionaire having a helipad, you're going to get some of that money to pay for your medical care, well, that's appealing to somebody who doesn't want to do anything.
And think of this. How many young people can relate to Donald Trump, or how many people can relate to a person that's had a couple of checking accounts closed down, missed payments, foreclosed on? Think about it. She's the real world. Somebody like Trump, he's you know, he's big time. And people think they can't relate, he can't relate to them. But they think she can relate to them because she's gone through the trials and tribulations. Things that would ordinarily have knocked somebody out of running because of their past woes with finances and stuff. It wasn't that many years ago. Not that many years ago. You and I talked about it off air. That Barney Frank was discovered to be a homosexual.
Right.
Oh my God. He was being expelled from Congress. He didn't, but he got close. Today, they're in Congress. It's a plus. I mean, think about the changes you've seen, folks. Think about the changes and how fast they're occurring now. don't believe just because we've always been America, Larry, stop worrying about it. We've always been America, will always be. There's no white hat going to ride in and save us at the last minute. Trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I mean, Larry,
not going to happen.
When it was like, 1960s, 70s, even the Ronald Reagan era, the notion that a politician would openly embrace socialism, I mean, that is so far from anything that you could have imagined happening, right? You'd be run out of town. And did Bernie Sanders actually ever say he was a democratic socialist, or were people just saying his policies were socialist and accusing him of being a socialist?
No, he said he was a socialist.
He did.
He claimed he was a self-professed socialist. And they all dreamers dream of this utopia type socialism world. Well, it don't exist. It doesn't. Jason, you can dream that there could be a world where everybody is in Shangri-La, right? You can dream that. But that's not the real world. The real world has ups and downs. It does. I don't care who you are. It has ups and downs. Socialism, well, let's all make the same amount of money. Then there won't be any strife. There won't be any jealousy. There won't be any that. No, there won't be nothing. Because what happens when everybody can make the same, human nature comes in. Well, why should I work my butt off if I'm not going to ever make any more than Joe?
Right. It promotes mediocrity is what it does. And capitalism promotes innovation. I want to tell you just a short story, Larry. When I went to Kiev with my first wife, the one and only time I was ever in Ukraine in 2003 or 2004, we went to the apartment that she had grown up in. That was her family apartment. Her brother and his wife still lived there. And Larry, I tell you, if you saw this building in like Brooklyn or Little Rock, you wouldn't go near it because the lights were smashed, the windows were broken, there was graffiti everywhere. Now, when we got into the apartment, it was very nice, neatly kept family home, but the exterior of the building was so crappy, I could barely believe it. Now, this was about 10 years after Perestroika, so, quite 15 years ago at this point. And I said to my wife at the time, why doesn't your brother start a little kind of coalition and collect $5 a month from everybody in the building and hire somebody to repair the outside and fix the lights and do all that kind of stuff? And she said to me, you're American. People here don't think like that. There were government people who used to take care of this building and now they're gone, so nobody does. And that's the way that type of socialist mentality creates a generation of people who are waiting there. It's not even that these people have their hands out, it's that their entire thought process does not come anywhere near this, how do we solve this problem? How do I create a solution that I can benefit from? And then, helping people become something that satisfies this element of human nature, which is self-preservation.
Exactly. I had a Russian Spetsnaz. That's a black beret for Russians compared to our green berets. And he and I chased each other everywhere. But then when all of it ended, we became fairly good friends. And he used to tell me, cause I used to ask, how do you keep all the people in Russia doing it like they do? How did that happen? And he said, vodka.
Vodka, right.
Yeah. They work in a no get anywhere job, live a nowhere life.
But a jug of vodka is $1.
And then they come home at night and they knock themselves out with vodka and they get up the next day and do it.
I noticed that when I was there at the supermarket.
And
booze and cigarettes were super cheap.
Right. Now, imagine this. We could stop illegal drugs coming into this country. But we don't. I wonder, this is just my opinion, actually it's just my wondering, could it be that the drugs in downtown Chicago among the black community, I'm wondering if it's not serving the same purpose as vodka in Russia.
Ooh, yeah.
Keep everybody numb.
Well, not only that, I think there's an agenda that's promoted through things like Black Lives Matter, where they want black people fearing the cops. They want white people fearing black people. They want to create all this divisive rhetoric where if we're all busy fighting each other, no one is paying attention to the people in Washington, D.C. who are, redirecting all this money and doing all these things. Larry, you bring up Chicago, and that takes me to my next point. There was this article here. Apparently, Ms. Cortez had the statement just recently that the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. Now, I am big on organic food and efficiency in handling, expendable products and recycling and all that, but I think that there's a real tendency for the government, and particularly people in the government who'd like to fool us, to try to simplify these matters and turn them into these binary sort of situations where either you support their solution or you're a climate denier. I think pollution and industrialization of our planet are important things for us to consider carefully to keep this environment safe and healthy for humans to live in. But I think the Chicago Climate Exchange has been very focused on trying to convince people that carbon dioxide is toxic to the environment, and that seems to be scientifically incorrect.
Well, let me ask you this. I've got two things that I think about when I hear this global warming and the world's coming to an end over this. We've had, how many ice ages? 10?
I don't know.
There weren't manufacturing plants through all of them.
Right.
There wasn't. I mean, did we have an ice age because of methane from dinosaur farts? I mean, what?
Hey, you never know. Dinosaur taco stands will knock you out, Larry.
Yeah. Well, now, the other thing is, if you look at the world, and if America does everything to stop all carbon dioxide, we stop it all here. Now, take the border of the United States and draw it straight up to the heavens. There's a whole rest of the world that's not doing it. China, you couldn't even see the Olympics for the smog.
Right. But here's the important distinction. Smog, Larry, is not made up of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is something each of us exhale and plants require to live. It's sulfur monoxide, it's mercury, it's all kinds of toxic elements that we are burning and putting fine particles into the atmosphere, not to mention John Brennan has admitted to aerosolized injection of metal particles into the atmosphere. As far as we can tell, the stated goal is to turn the ionosphere into a plasma so that it's more conductive, and things like radar and other EMF frequencies that they want to transmit through the ionosphere can have a longer range and do, God knows what. But this is a distraction, this talking about, taxing carbon dioxide. It's totally off the mark.
Well, and that's, here again, we're talking the function of branding. Al Gore comes out with this video that how bad the Earth's going to hell.
Right. Inconvenient truth.
And all of a sudden it becomes a big deal. Convenient truth. Yeah. And then he tells you about all the things that are tearing us up, and he does them all. He flies in jets or private jets. He drives in caravans with big limousines.
Yeah.
Folks, we're losing our country. Now, fortunately, Jason, there are still enough of us. If we will open our eyes, there's still enough of us that if we will engage, if we will not sit back, and every time somebody says a word, they're called a racist or a sexist, that's making you shut up. When you shut up, we've lost. We've lost. I don't care if I say something that some of these groups think I'm being a racist or I'm being a sexist. What's important is if I know I'm not. Right. I know I'm not. But I know if they can take a word from me, then it limits my speech. And next thing you know, they take another word. Now my speech is limited more. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon we become a silent nation. And folks, when we get there, they can walk all over us. They're walking over us now. But the ones of us that could change this and save it, and I mean today, are sitting out there concerned about a myriad of things none of which involves taking care of their government. They just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people are starting. Thank you, media. The media and going after Trump has finally gotten people to wake up in more numbers than I ever dreamed possible. And we just got to channel that.
Yeah, I do think President Trump is alerting people to some of the shenanigans that go on in the media, which is good. The one last thing that I wanted to say with regard to climate change and Al Gore and all of that, there was this article in 2013 in Forbes titled "Blood and Gore Making a Killing on Anti-Carbon Investment Hype." And this is talking about how Al Gore and his carbon credit huckstering partner David Blood are principals at Generation Investment Management. And they wrote an article about the coming carbon asset bubble. Al Gore was one of the founders of the Chicago Climate Exchange. So, while we're talking about marketing and selling ideas that are maybe not 100% fully thought through, it seems like this Inconvenient Truth movie, which was put out in 2006, made a lot of predictions that have not come true. Seems pretty clearly geared towards helping Al Gore to make money with this Chicago Climate Exchange, which is a kind of a network for creating these financial transactions sort of out of nowhere that reminds me a lot of cryptocurrency, Larry?
Yeah. Well, Wood Duck, that's what he used to be called, Wood Duck, Al Gore, when he was in the Senate.
Wood Duck?
Wood Duck, because he was so, he always tried to be so perfect. He was so
stiff,
staccato in everything he did.
Yeah.
And so around the Capitol and all that, everybody referred to him as Wood Duck.
How did Bill Clinton get hooked up with him?
Well, Bill Clinton, he didn't. The Stevenses hooked him up. The Stevenses knew that Gore could help be Mr. Perfect to Mr. Clinton, who was wild as June hair. And so that's why he came on board, because he was Mr. Perfect. They needed somebody that was young. They needed somebody that had experience with Congress, and Wood Duck was it. Clinton didn't pick him. Stevens picked him.
And the Stevens, of course, are very connected to investments in Arkansas. They're
investing all over the world. They were the ones that sent me to Nicaragua because they had gas leases in Nicaragua, and they wanted those protected. And then when Ortega took over, well, it cut them off from their leases, so that's why I was sent in there.
So Stevens, it's an investment firm, though, based in Arkansas, right?
Based in Arkansas. Back in its day, it was the largest investment firm outside of Wall Street in the world. To show you how big they were, in the 70s, it was illegal to do business with China, right? You couldn't do business with a communist country. We had an office in China with a group called Riceland Foods, a co-op of rice growers in Arkansas through the Stevens, and Stevens had an office in China. And nobody else could. That's how strong they were globally, nationally.
How did they do that?
Still are. Huh? Power,
how were they able to do that?
Power and money.
I see.
This isn't new, this power of the money. Some of the faces have changed, but the rules haven't. People with the money, they make the rules.
Right.
There wasn't big multi-billion gazillionaire. I mean, look at the top 5 world-class people today. I mean, world-rich people. A bunch of it's internet kind of guys.
Right.
That didn't exist before, back in the 70s. It didn't exist.
So what was the relationship between the Stevens and Al Gore?
Well, the real relationship was the Stevens and his father. Jack and Whit both knew and respected his father a great deal. And then when his father got Wood Duck into politics, then they kind of helped chum him through. They were major financiers in Wood Duck's campaigns.
Huh. On the website for Stevens Inc., it says in 1933, Whit Stevens established the firm to trade Arkansas highway bonds. Strikes me that this was when, well, Eisenhower built the national highway system, didn't he? After, or who was responsible? It was after World War II, wasn't it?
No, that was Eisenhower. Eisenhower modeled our interstate highway program after what he saw in Germany with the Autobahn.
Right.
And the interstate, folks, so you know, the interstate highway that we all enjoy today was put in as military so that they could build roads that could be sealed off so military transportation from one coast to the other could be done without interruption. That's why they built the interstate highway originally. It wasn't for convenience for commuters.
It's like the
it had
internet.
Nothing to do with that.
Same thing with the internet. Initially built for military use. So the thing that intrigues me about this, Larry, is that, you know, they're talking about the Stevens being involved with, you know, state bonds. Brings me back to your tenure at ADFA.
Arkansas Development Finance Authority.
They love bonds.
I was in the middle of, yes. And they loved faking the sales of bonds to use for cash flow for cocaine.
Wow.
Speaking of it, I mean, not you, but folks, I do want to remind you that the stuff you're hearing from me, and as we get involved in this plan to save the country, and folks, we're going to save it. If you will engage, we're going to save it. We got to keep Jason and his program growing. Jason, how do they do that, buddy? I mean, this program is where I go. This is where I come.
Thank you for mentioning it, Larry. People can sponsor the show by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and becoming monthly sponsors. In addition to keeping the show going here on YouTube and Periscope and Facebook, they're going to get access to a lot of exclusive content. The Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp, Unseen Libya with Jimmy and Joanne Moriarty, Ole Damagard, David Hawkins. There's quite a number of exclusive shows that are only available on Patreon, and people can also make a one-time sponsorship payment by going to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. But I don't want people to forget that Larry also needs our sponsorship, and if you go to nicholslive.com, you're going to get access to his scripts. He's going to have that new one up there tomorrow. You can also link to Larry's YouTube channel and listen to the shows that he's doing on his own. Of course, there is a donate button right here that you can use to support Larry financially. Just click on that and it's going to give you the information that you need. You can go to paypal.com and use Larry's email address, which is nicholslive@aol.com. I couldn't do this show without Larry, and I really do appreciate and enjoy hearing your firsthand stories about the history of Arkansas, because I think in a lot of cases, Larry, particularly with families like these guys, the Stevens, these are schemes that go back generations. I mean, maybe this father or grandfather discovered there was some way they could, you know, get over on state bonds, and in the 1940s they built themselves up to a couple of $1 million that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and now these guys are billionaires, and you know, this is the type of criminal mind that's controlling politics in our country.
Absolutely. And folks, you need to remember, why is Arkansas important? A podunk state in the South in the 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Well, if you think about it, folks, Arkansas is more relevant to you today than actually it was when Bill Clinton was president, because the model that was used in Arkansas to get absolute control of this state, I mean, everything. The Stevens controlled everything. You couldn't walk across the street without saying, "Jack Whit, may I?" They controlled everything. They controlled every politician. They controlled the media. That system is alive and well now in Washington, and they're all using it, especially the Democrats. They're using it to change your form of government. Folks, they want, the progressives want not to be liberal. Liberals ought to be joining us, Jason. Liberals, true liberals, ought to be joining you and I in this fight to save our form of government.
Right.
Progressives don't want to just have abortion. They want to fundamentally change our government, and they want to change it to socialism. And all of the politicians in Washington want to be there. This is why this script is so important, making them be scared. They want to be there when this thing goes down so that they're a part of the elite status, the committee that will run everything.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. They're all hanging on. If we can just stay in Congress one more term, or stay in the Senate one more term, maybe this is the year it falls. Well, folks, I'm telling you, we've never been closer to losing our form of government ever before in our nation's history. We're inches away. Like Jason was saying, they're openly talking about the values of socialism.
Yeah.
They're openly using, like that Picasso or whatever, however you pronounce that girl's name, they're using her as a product brand to sell our young on socialism.
Yeah.
Think about it. Dear God, think about it. Look at the media. Look how the media is controlling everything. What on earth has Donald Trump ever done to the media originally to make them hating the way they do? Now, you know, of course, calling them fake news and stuff. I understand there's a running battle, but that feud started with him the day he got elected. Do you realize they elected him? He was their pet peeve in the primary because Hillary knew if Donald Trump could win, she could beat him easy. It would be a joke.
Well, that's what
guess
she thought.
The joke turned out on her, turned on her.
Yeah.
And the media got caught in it.
Larry, real briefly back on the Stevens, they were somehow involved with this commodities trade that Hillary Clinton did, where it was like cattle futures or something, and she invested.
that was Red Bone. There was a trader in Fayetteville, a stockbroker named Red Bone, and they met him through Jim McDougal. Jim McDougal got them hooked up with him, and so Hillary took $1,000, gave it to him, and made $250,000 in 1 month.
I mean, that's
what
absurd.
What he did is he allocated their investment. So if he put Hillary's money into this and somebody else put their money into that, if the that won and the this lost, he just changed it to look like Hillary bought the that, and the poor schmuck that bought the that originally ended up with the this. It's called allocating, you know, the victor. And he would have gotten away with it over and over and over if I hadn't exposed it.
The White House, according to the New York Times, said that in 1978, Hillary invested $1,000 in commodities futures, and that the investment grew in 10 months to trading in the notoriously volatile market into a gain of nearly $100,000. Larry, $1,000 in 1978, I feel like a Cadillac in 1978 was probably $5,000. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Well, I'm telling you, it was $250,000, and it was barely over a month. Now, that's the truth. I don't know what got reported. I know because, guess what? I was there.
I mean, what I'm getting at is, you know, we don't really, like when Ocasio-Cortez openly says to the public, oh, I can't afford an apartment in Washington, D.C., is this not her basically showing up with her hand out and asking somebody to bribe her?
Yes, it is. Let me tell you, if they scrutinize her election campaign money the way they do Trump, she would be out of office. There is no way that girl conducted her campaign and didn't misappropriate campaign funds. No way.
Why do you say that?
And because she's ignorant.
Well, but I mean, give us a little more detail. I agree with you,
well,
but
the clothes she bought. I mean, here comes somebody from nothing, and all of a sudden she's got a wardrobe that would impress the Queen of Sheba.
Yeah. Where did she get a $3,000 suit? I mean, you know, when I directed Daydreams of Dubai, they paid me a ton of money, and I went to the Armani store in Dubai and bought a suit, but I haven't done that in 5 years. It's a lot of money, $3,000 to spend on one suit of clothing.
Yeah, and I'm begging for money to help us try to save the country. And just like you said, she can say, oh, gee, I'm out of toilet paper. And in will flow the money from the people that are backing socialism. Socialism is backed by some pretty deep pockets. One George Soros is to name one.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because obviously George Soros has made all of his money from the very capitalist activities of trading and currency trading and whatever. It's almost like they want socialism for everybody else. This is really the problem with socialism, right? There's always somebody on top who's taking more than their fair share.
The people that become the committee, the elite, oh, they make tons. They make tons.
Right.
Everybody else is barely scrunched by.
Right.
Folks, it's that way in everyone. Go to every situation where socialism has existed. It's always the same. And there's the committee, there's some focal point like a leader, a king, or whatever you want to call them. But then there's the committee. And that makes up the committee are taken care of very well. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Larry, you know, we've got one of our viewers here in the comments, I just lost the comment, but says that they have a feeling that Ocasio-Cortez is a CIA agent or operative. This is Maureen Heck says that. I mean, it sounds a bit odd, but there's a lot of incongruence to what she's doing. She said she had no money, and she went to BU, which is a very expensive private college.
Let me tell you something. I have worked with the CIA. I would be I'm disappointed in that agency now for sure. But if they ever brought her on as a secret agent, they would have felt they've fallen off the map in my category. No. She's known since probably being very young how to get on the right side of people. She had to have made it. But now, explain to me how she went to Brigham, whatever, the college.
BU.
And at the same time, BU, and at the same time was writing hot checks or losing checking accounts, being run out of apartments and stuff. How do those two sync up together?
Right.
Now, she probably went to BU under some form of minority scholarship.
She doesn't seem very smart to get a scholarship.
She wouldn't have to, being a single Latino woman. You kidding me? There's grants for her that you and I would never see for our kids.
Possible.
I mean, so it's very possible she got through school on grants.
Right.
Minority type things. I don't know. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. We don't know.
But now, had that have been a conservative running, we would know all about them.
Well, let me ask you this, Larry, because we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I agree with the statement that you made earlier. As a matter of fact, I want to get even more involved. I think if people were to scrutinize her campaign, how it was financed, exactly how she came up from working as a waitress in a diner to running for political office, she doesn't seem, you know, I keep coming back to Laura Loomer because Laura Loomer is exceptional. She has stood out from the field of independent journalists, of people who show up at public events with cell phones to report on them via Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Laura is exceptional in that category in that she keeps making national news. She keeps identifying individuals and situations that she can insinuate herself into to shine a light on those situations, whether it's finding ballot box in a rental car or running up to Keith Ellison or running up to Ocasio-Cortez. You might hate Laura, but you cannot deny that she is exceptional in her field. I don't see that with Ocasio-Cortez. I don't see her delivering speeches that stun with their insight and having a resume of, you know, she worked at this company and she worked at this company and she's so exceptional that she rose up through the ranks and became this, you know, public figure figure running for office. She just seems like a moderately attractive, moderately, I don't even want to say she's moderately intelligent. She seems moderately unintelligent and pretty uninformed. So it doesn't seem to make sense. When I talk to you and Larry Klayman and other people that have experience with campaigns, they indicate that it's extremely difficult for an unknown person, particularly one without money, to do something like this, particularly in a state like New York.
Let me tell you, it's not as hard as you think. The problem Laura would have, the conservative, moral, Christian community will not play the dirty tricks that the Democrats will. They've got no qualms about, look, if she was a hooker on 9th Street, if it could sell, they would get her. And as long as they know what we knew in Arkansas, we could do anything we wanted to, Jason. We could do anything. Why? Because the media couldn't touch us, would not touch us. They've got that with the Democrats now. They can do anything they want to. They can pull a hooker off 9th Street and decide to run her for Congress, and the media would never touch the fact that she was ever a hooker if they didn't want her to. Now, you can take us moral folks, right? Oh, God, we couldn't find somebody like that. And we're defeated all the time because we keep trying to elect perfect individuals. Nobody's perfect, folks. I didn't elect Donald Trump. I didn't vote for Donald Trump for president because I wanted him to be the Pope.
Right.
I knew what he was. I wanted a change. I wanted to give a businessman a chance to see what he could do. We knew over and over and over, we've seen over and over and over what professional politicians have done to this nation.
Right.
You know, what I can't get people to see, if Hillary had won, by now, we would be a socialist nation. Might not call us socialist, but we would have been probably 3/4 of the way a fully, complete socialist country. That was her job. That was what she was going to do. And then Bill was going to be the, Secretary General of the UN, and the world was going to be complete.
Right. Yeah, well, for anybody named Clinton, I think that, the last question that I wanted to ask you, Larry, was if you have any advice for people who do want to utilize public resources that maybe we don't know about to investigate this campaign of Ocasio-Cortez. How can we look and see how it started, who funded it, search for any kind of impropriety? If you were doing opposition research on Ocasio-Cortez, where would you begin?
Well, the first place I would go would be to opposition research groups that work for the Republican Party. Now, you have to be careful. You got to find a true opposition research group, not somebody that's just a mixture of rhinos, right? You got to be careful to do that, or you need to hire a gumshoe, hire a private dick, just investigator.
Well, I think the people in our audience are more likely to want to do their own investigating, digging around on the internet. Any advice for how to do that without hiring people or contacting lobbyists that maybe they have no?
It's not. Jason, it's not the digging up the truth or her history. Thanks to the internet today, I think that's fairly achievable by an individual.
Okay.
The problem is you end up where Larry Nichols is. Who are you going to call? Who do I call? Do you see me calling up ABC, NBC, and CBS and telling them, guys, you need to hear what I said on Jason's program. Don't you think I should be on ABC, NBC, and CBS saying these things if they were truly trying to get a broad view of what's going on in the public? Don't you think MSNBC should have me on, considering they're getting smashed by Fox? How's MSNBC, how's CNN staying on? CNN hasn't got the audience you do, hardly.
Well,
how are they staying on? Money. Power. Disney. Money. Politics is money, folks. It makes it all go around. But you can find out what you need to find out. That's not really the hard part. The hard part is once you've got it, just ask Laura Lemons. Once you've got it, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
See, by all rights, she should be identified as a major field reporter by now, right? I mean, she's broken a couple of stories that should have just had legs galore, correct?
Yep. Yeah. Instead, they shut her out, turn her off of Twitter, and really try to suppress her. It's a terrible thing. But Larry, we're going to continue to look at this and question these sort of things. Before we wrap it up, I want to remind everyone that they can go to nicholslive.com and they can find Larry's scripts there, as well as the link to provide financial sponsorship for Larry. You can go to paypal.com and use his email address, nicholslive@aol.com. Larry is kind enough to spend his Tuesday afternoons with me each week at 3 p.m. Eastern. So I hope that people will sponsor this show by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I will be back later tonight only on Patreon with Michael Moore of True Pundit. We're going to be looking at Peter Carr from the special counsel's office and his very unusual statements about the veracity or lack thereof of that article in BuzzFeed. Larry, Peter Carr hasn't said anything other than we have no comment at this time until Friday, when he released that statement that the BuzzFeed article about Michael Cohen was inaccurate. So I find that to be a really standout, unusual thing.
It's significant. It is absolutely significant. And folks, I do want to ask if you can help me immediately. I need it desperately because we've got to move this plan into action.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jason, for having me on. And thank you, Jason, for not being sponsor supported.
Yeah.
That's what keeps you free.
Yep. Got to try to keep the honest news honest. So thank you for joining me, Larry, and thanks to all of our generous sponsors. I'll see everybody tonight at 8 o'clock only on Patreon for More Pain with Michael Moore. Thanks.